okay? Everybody hear me okay, or do you need more volume there? What do you say? Can you hear me, Eugene? Can you hear me now? Yeah, well, that's echoing, so it's got to be loud enough. How about you, George? You can't hear me either? If you stop talking, maybe you could hear me, yeah. Second row sounds good? All right. I've got many hats today, so. All right. Carolyn's at it again. All right, well, with that, let's get into this tonight. Everybody get notes from the back? We are in lesson number 4 of our Life of Joseph series together. And tonight we're going to talk about defeating temptation. We're in Genesis chapter 39. Ed, could you close that door while you're back there? Just to keep any of my kids from escaping in. That would be good. So, yeah. All right, so Genesis 39, we'll start in verse 1 there. It says, "And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person, and well favored. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. Unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came in me, and it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. He looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. Well, things seem to finally be going well for Joseph. Yes, he's a slave, but he is a very well-positioned slave. He's second in command of a good house in Egypt there, Potiphar's house, and things were kind of looking up, even though it wasn't a great situation. It was certainly better than it could have been. But then he found himself in another tough decision, a tough position. And really what got him in trouble was his integrity, his resolve to honor God and to keep himself pure. And so from Joseph's life tonight, we're going to find some biblical keys to defeat temptation. We're going to understand the meaning of temptation and identify areas in our lives where we might be tempted. We're going to understand the various lies of temptation and identify which, if any, maybe you've heard or used in the past. And then we need to choose to resist temptations in our lives and make God-honoring decisions and live a life of integrity. If you've ever been involved in organized sports at school or maybe extracurricular sports or been on a sports team with a coach and all that, a lot of times they'll sit you down and have you watch films, right? Have you watch films, recordings of games that have been played in the past. They don't make the team watch old games because they're bored or that they want to punish the players. Watching game film, it's a great way to see how your opponent likes to work, how he likes to play, their favorite strategies. It gives you a sense of their offense and their defense, and you can find areas of weakness that you can take advantage of. It's a good way to prepare for a future game with that team. Well, watching Joseph deal with Potiphar's wife in Genesis 39 is kind of like watching a game film about temptation. And so all of us are going to face times of temptation. It's always a part of a Christian life. And Joseph's testimony is helpful because it shows us how we can overcome it. James 1:14 says, "Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed." We all face temptations. It could be, lust. It could be lying, cheating, stealing. It could be bad association or, bad company. It could be bad habits or, there's just places you shouldn't go, things you shouldn't do. We all face temptations. And temptation doesn't go away because you got saved. It doesn't go away because you're trying your best to live for God. But one of the lessons we can learn from watching Joseph's life is that temptations, though they do come, they don't have to have victory over us. They don't have to damage our testimony. They don't have to derail our spiritual life. And first of all tonight, notice that temptation is deceitful. Deceit is defined in the Webster's Dictionary as dishonest behavior that is meant to fool or trick someone by concealing or misrepresenting the truth. Being deceitful is to lie or to trick somebody into doing something they might not otherwise do. That's the goal of deceit. There's lots of deceitful people in the Bible. There's lots of examples of deceitful behavior in the Bible. And one of these people that was known for being a deceiver was pretty close to Joseph because he was his father, Jacob. The name Jacob means deceiver, and he lived up to that name. He tricked his brother Esau into giving up his birthright in Genesis 25. He lied to his father Isaac so that he could steal Esau's blessing in Genesis 27. And then there's the biggest deceiver of all, which is Satan, the devil. The Bible calls him the father of all liars. John 8, verse 44, Jesus says, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." And in Revelation 12:9, it says, "The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." Satan twisted the truth when he tempted Eve to sin in Genesis chapter 3. And later, he tried tempting Jesus Christ and twisted the truth in that as well, tried to deceive him. He uses the same tactics with us today. He twists the truth, or he lies outright to make us believe that, sin and temptation, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not that dangerous, and the consequences really won't be that bad. But what we need to notice from Joseph's life is 5 specific lies that the devil tries to sell us on. And the first one is, it's okay to just look. Lie number 1, it's okay to just look. Genesis 39, Joseph, it says, was a goodly person and well-favored. In the Hebrew language, Joseph was a good-looking guy. He was easy on the eyes, if you will. He was a strong man. He was tall, dark, and handsome, however you want to put it. Maybe he got his good looks from his mother, Rachel. She was known to be beautiful. He worked hard in his father's fields. He worked hard for his master Potiphar, so I'm sure he had a good physique. Maybe he'd be like our modern-day athlete or, movie star or whatever. He had good hair, good muscles, a nice guy. He was just a great catch. He was goodly and well-favored. And the Bible says in verse 7 that Potiphar's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. This doesn't mean she looked at him just once. This means she couldn't keep her eyes off of Joseph. She probably watched him for quite a while before she ever spoke to him, before she ever tempted him. She was married, but she thought, I'm just looking. It's okay just to look. I'm not actually doing anything. We are all very much affected by what we see. By what we see. Nobody knows that better than those that are in marketing and advertising. We are very affected by what we see. Our daily lives are covered in visual temptation. Take the example of any fast food chain. The commercials, those things are steaming hot and beautiful. They never come out of the bag that way. They never look that good, right? You're lucky if they got your order right in the first place. There is a whole industry about how to stage those sandwiches just for those shoots and commercials, and they're not edible for the commercial, let me tell you. It's all about what you see. It's all about what you see. Everywhere we turn in our lives, there's visual temptation. There's things that Christians just should not look at. What kind of movies do you watch? What kind of sites do you visit on the internet? What apps or videos are you involved with on your phone or mobile device? What kind of things are you letting into your eyes? We sang as little kids, be careful, little eyes, what you see. And it really is quite important. We are to protect our eyes from the things that do not honor God. Psalm 101:3 says, I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. Job 31:1, it says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I look upon a maid? So the first lie that Satan tries to sell us is, well, it's all right just to look. That's a lie. That's a lie. Lie number 2, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. When Potiphar's wife propositioned Joseph, she obviously didn't think what she was doing was so bad. She justified it in her own mind. It was not an uncommon thing in that day for affluential women to sleep with men that weren't their husbands. Potiphar was a high-ranking man. She was used to getting her way and having what she wanted because of his money and because of his power. But if you think about Joseph, Joseph did not treat this as not that bad. He called it for what it was. He said, how could I do this great wickedness and sin against God? The world tends to water down sin. The world tends to use other words to make us believe certain sins aren't that bad. They use words like alternative lifestyles, or alcoholism is now a disease so that the individual is the victim in that. The world calls abortion a woman's right to choose so they can justify what the Bible calls murder. They call sex outside of marriage friends with benefits. It's far more than that. So they water it down. You just watch what they're putting out there and just the people that they're propping up. They're trying to make immorality and wickedness look normal and not that bad. In July of 2012, a mom in Phoenix was arrested for child abuse after she poured beer into her 2-year-old son's sippy cup. She did it because her son kept reaching for her cup. It's just a little beer. It's not that bad. At least that's what she thought. You know, that kind of attitude in parents leads to the children becoming substance abusers later in their lives. It really is bad. And the world tries to water it down and make it seem really not that bad. In his commentary on the life of Joseph, J.G. Butler said, "The devil is a master at sophisticating sin and dignifying defilement." The devil is a master at sophisticating sin and dignifying defilement. Man, that is where we are right now as a culture. If you don't agree with this thing or partake in this thing or this behavior, then you are the bigot and the problem. You're the evil one. And sin is dignified. Don't be deceived by the lie that sin is acceptable. Your friends and your parent, family, whatever, your coworkers, they might think it's just fine, it's not that bad, but like Joseph identified, this is great wickedness before God. It's never acceptable to God. So lie number 2, it's not that bad. Lie number 3, it's only one time. Potiphar's wife didn't just tempt Joseph once and leave him alone after he refused her. The Bible says she spake to Joseph day by day. She kept coming back after him, kept trying to get him to give in. And day after day, Joseph said no. Can you imagine how exhausting that would be if that was the workplace you were in? It would have been easy for him to give in and say, fine, just this once. In our day, temptation is just as persistent. Just when you win one battle against temptation, you wake up the next morning and find another temptation comes your way. The devil never stops. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter 5:8, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Sometimes we want to just give in and say, well, it's just this one time. But giving in to temptation, even once, can have dangerous consequences. A writer for Our Daily Bread shared this story. He said, "As a boy, I used to ride a go-kart that was steered by a rope. On one occasion, I propelled my way down the driveway, and my parents' warning came to mind, always look up and down the street for cars. But I told myself, it's okay not to do that just this once. And then I heard the sound of screeching tires as a car came to an abrupt stop to avoid hitting me. Thinking I could break my parents' rules just once nearly cost me my life." If Joseph would have said, just this once, his life would have been ruined in an instant. He would have never been able to see the dreams that God had gave him come true. He would have sabotaged what God was trying to do with his life. Don't sacrifice the plans that God has for you by giving in to temptation. Just this once can have consequences that will follow you for the rest of your life. So lie number 3, it's just this one time. That's a lie. Lie number 4, no one will ever know. No one will ever know. Potiphar's wife waited till everyone had left the house, and then she tried to tempt Joseph one more time. If this was ever a chance for Joseph to give in, then it was now. Joseph could have thought, well, no one will ever know. He could have believed that lie. Sometimes we're more likely to rationalize sin or give in to temptation when we think that there's little chance we'll ever get caught. Nobody will ever know. That nobody besides us will ever know what we did. Sometimes we might even think that if nobody finds out about what we did, then it doesn't even count as a sin. We think that way. We rationalize that way in our minds. But Charles Spurgeon once said, sin is sin, whether we see it or not. Just because other people never find out doesn't make it acceptable. God sees everything, and he knows our hearts thoroughly. Proverbs 15:3 says, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good." 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart." So that's a lie. No one will ever know. Well, God will know. And just because you're not caught doesn't mean it's right. Lie number 5, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. When all of her other tricks failed her, Potiphar's wife tries to force Joseph. She caught him by his garment. She grabbed him. She held him against his will. She was basically saying, hey, I'm the boss. You work for me. You don't have a choice. There will be times in your life where temptation is more than a suggestion. It's a demand. I've heard of people that they go to a work-related get-together at a restaurant, whatever, and the boss stands up and orders beer for the whole table. And the individual that told me this story said, wait, I'm having a Coke. And once he was bold enough to do that, then others did as well. But sometimes temptation isn't a suggestion. It's pushed on you. Your teacher says, if you don't believe in this, then you don't get to pass the class. Friends find a subtle way of saying that, well, if you don't do this, then we're not going to be friends anymore. And if you're not careful, you'll justify giving in to temptation because you believe, well, I really don't have a choice. It's out of my hands. And the truth is, you always have a choice to do what's right. You have to see the choices for what they really are. Purity is more important than popularity. Bible instructions are more important than biological impulses. Seeking gratification from the Lord is better than having immediate gratification in sin. Fulfilling your desires rather than being faithful to the Lord is never going to work out the way you want it to. You always have a choice. And Joseph shows that he made the choice despite being almost forced. And so temptation can be deceitful, but it can be defeated. It can be defeated. It universally affects all of us. Temptation is never ending, and it tells us lies, and it tries to justify sin to us, and it's very convincing at times. And with all of that in mind, how can we have victory over it? Well, there's 3 concrete ways in the life of Joseph that we find here to defeat temptation. And the first is that Joseph made a pre-decision. A pre-decision. If you're trying to lose weight, one of the tips that coaches will often give is that you have to decide not to cheat on your diet before you leave the house, before you go to that party, before you go to that restaurant. You have to decide, I'm not going to cheat on my diet. No matter what's put out in front of me, I'm not going to cheat on that. Why do you think that is? Well, it's because temptation is better defeated before it ever comes. But before it ever shows up, it's better defeated early. Joseph defeats temptation because he decided long before this situation ever came up that he wasn't going to give in. And we have to do the same. We have to do the same. What are some of the temptations you face? Are you tempted to cheat and cut corners at work? Are you tempted to lie to your family or your friends or others? Are you tempted to take things that don't belong to you, to engage in ungodly and relationships that don't please the Lord? Or, don't wait till the temptation comes. Decide before that you won't give in. Decide that I'm not going to watch this, or I'm not going to listen to that, or I'm not going to go here before the opportunity presents itself. If you wait till you're alone, until you face the temptation and nobody's around, it's too late. Decide right now that I'm not going to give in to that thing, that it's important, that I'm not going to cheat. The great news is that God knows the things that tempt us better than we do, and He always provides a way for us to avoid falling into sin. 1 Corinthians 10:13, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. If you are all alone, late at night, and nobody else is around, and temptation presents itself, that's not when you're going to discover the escape. We see the example in Joseph's life. The way of escape comes much earlier. Before Potiphar's wife ever started looking in Joseph's direction, the Bible says the Lord was with Joseph. The way of escape comes through realizing that if we're saved, God is with us and His Spirit lives within us. Ezekiel 36:27 says, I will put my Spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and ye shall keep my judgments and do them. And Romans 8:9 says, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. The Holy Spirit will guide us into all truth, which is what it says in John 16:13. When the Spirit of truth is come, He will guide you into all truth. The secret to making a predecision against temptation is to ask God to lead you by His Spirit, to guide you by His Spirit, to ask Him to help you be sensitive and yielded to the Spirit's guidance in your life so that you can be sure that you don't give in and fall in. You know that if you're following the Spirit, He's not going to steer you into sin. If you walk in the Spirit, you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. So Joseph made a predecision that he would not sin. He also offered an immediate refusal. It's important to determine ahead of time that you're not going to give in, but it's also important to know your response when the temptation comes. How are you going to respond when the temptation presents itself? Well, there's one very important word that we all need to remember. No. Spurgeon once said, learn to say no. It will be of more use to you than the ability to read Latin. Joseph said no to Potiphar's wife in 3 different ways. In verse 8, it says he refused. In verse 10, it says he hearkened not to her words. And in verse 12, he left. He left the situation entirely. When temptation came, Joseph literally ran away. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart. There's a difference between immediately saying no and eventually saying it. Don't let yourself be talked into giving in. Don't try to talk yourself out of giving in. Just say, no, I'm not going to do that thing. Don't take the time to rationalize and to justify and think through it all. Just say, like Joseph did, I refuse. I'm not going to listen. And eventually, if he had to, he ran away. He understood that the concept is this, that we are tainted by sin. We are cursed by sin. Your flesh wants to give in to temptation. The answer is to stay away from it and to steer clear from it. If you were on a diet, if your doctor told you, listen, you don't change your habits, you're not going to make it much longer, and it was real important that you stick to your diet, so stick to it, would you go buy your coffee at Dunkin' Donuts? Walk in the lobby, I'll have my black coffee, no cream, I'm on a diet, and just look at all those eclairs in the face. I mean, really. There was a man that, I think he was a pastor, I think the story goes, and he was, every day he drove by the donut store and he faced a similar situation. He had to go on a diet. The doctor told him so and said, all right, Lord, well, just don't let there be any parking spaces. Don't let there be any parking spaces at the donut shop, and I'll be just fine. Well, he showed up at the office, and his youth pastor looks at him, and he's got a bag of donuts. He said, what happened? And he said, I prayed and asked the Lord not to let there be any empty spots, but third time around, one opened up, Don't put yourself in the situation in the first place. If you struggle with what you look at, don't walk down the aisle in the grocery store with all the magazines. Don't give yourself the opportunity to sin. Run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. It says in Romans 13:14, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. So Joseph offered an immediate refusal. He said no. And then he honored God. Joseph says in verse 9, "How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" He understood that if he gave into this temptation, it would be a sin against his boss, yes, but more importantly, a sin against God. Why should you be sure to always tell the truth? Why should you make sure that you live a pure lifestyle? Why should you resist the temptation to steal or to cheat? Your reasons should go way deeper than, well, I don't want to get caught, or I'm not so sure about those consequences, or my family will be real disappointed in me. You should not give in to temptation, because when we sin against God. And our goal should be to honor God in every area of our life. And Joseph understood this. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Joseph didn't say, listen, I'm going to get caught. You're going to ruin a sweet deal for me. He didn't say that. He said, this is a sin against God. He defeated this temptation. You might think in a perfect story that, he defeats the temptation, he comes out vindicated, everything goes well from him from now on, but that's not what happens, is it? Potiphar's wife gets angry, makes up a story about him, tells everyone in the house that Joseph attacked her, and when her husband comes home, feeds him the same lie. And as a result of her lie, Joseph ends up losing his job and being thrown into a prison. How is it that he did everything right, took a stand, honored God in the face of repeated temptations, and yet gets punished? If we're not careful, we'll assume that, unless good things happen, it's pointless to try to do the right thing. But there was never a second that God did not know what was going on. He had a very obvious to us plan for Joseph's life. He was in control. It says the Lord was with Joseph. He was in control. He was still taking care of Joseph. It was just as he was with Joseph, God is with us today. He guides us. He gives us the strength that we need to resist the temptations that the world offers, and the strength that we need to honor Him through every area of our life. And, if you give into that temptation, you lose your dreams. You'll miss opportunities that God has for you. Honor God through temptation by resisting the temptation and refusing it. And though it might seem like, again, Joseph, well, this isn't working out. You got sold into slavery. Well, that's not the way I thought my life would go. And then he gets put in the prison. Well, I don't understand how this is going to help my dream to come true. But God had a plan. God will continue to work out His plan through your life. Stick by His word and do what's right in the midst of all kinds of temptation. All right, so I've got some prayer requests for you. Yes, Paul? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yep. Well, and there's a lot of speculation between theologians and stuff with how much did Potiphar know and how much did he suspect. And he was the captain of the king's guard, right? He was the keeper of the prison that Joseph went to. So some folks wonder if, Potiphar had to send him there to maintain his own reputation. But yeah, I'm sure it came full circle. So, all right, let me pull up my prayer request here. Keep praying for Don Timmerman, recovering at home. Pray too, I didn't get her on your list, but Marcy Ostenbrook is recovering. She had a surgery done on her arm, her wrist. They took a few bones out of her wrist because I think it's arthritis related. They were rubbing bone on bone, and when that happens, they just take some out and let it fill in on its own, and that relieves that pain. So she said one arm will be shorter, but I'm sure I won't notice. But anyway, so be praying for her. She's doing fine, but she's hurting tonight, is what Paul said. Keep praying for Kelly Harnish. We saw her, I don't remember if she was here last Sunday or not, but we saw her a couple Sundays ago. And she was still hurting at that point because of she had fractures in her back, and they put some of that glue stuff in there. And at least she can walk now, but still quite uncomfortable and in pain. So pray for her. Pray for the teach-outs. There are missionaries tonight over there, so it's kind of fun to have them with us. So, but keep praying for them as they're hoping their stuff gets back and everything's good with that in September, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just keep praying for the details of their shipment, that it arrives, and they said it's already been delayed a week, so can you imagine flying ahead of your stuff? So just be praying about that for them. But they are settled into a place right now, and they've got the car, which is great, and they're seeking where God would have them to go next as well. So they're asking for wisdom and clear direction in that from the Lord. So you can keep praying about that. They're actively working on that. So, and then if you want to share anything else, go ahead. But okay. Right. Right. So yeah, tonight they were able to virtually join a congregation up in Canada. What's the primary language in New Brunswick? Is it? Oh, so French and English there. So yeah, they were able to share their testimony with the church there before coming to prayer meeting. You've done double duty tonight with us. So yeah, so just be praying about that God would make it clear if that's where He would have them to go. And so many what ifs and questions, right? So just be praying for all of that. Anything else tonight that we need to add or update or change? Anybody? David Gilliland, this is George's son-in-law. Okay. So, yeah, pray for David, serving in the Air Force and stationed in Germany. Pray for Doris Knoll tonight. She's our shut-in. Pray for our nation, of course. Pastors in California are being threatened weekly right now by the local governments. Obviously I've told you about John MacArthur's church. He's not the only one. There's another church that they had church, and when they came out, I might have my details wrong, but when they came out, there was orders pasted all over the doors, cease and desist. So they've tried to meet as many of the guidelines as possible, and they were told to cease and desist because they are singing. So anyway, in the United States of America, there are pastors, like-minded pastors, that are being told they may not hold church services. And these pastors don't really see any other option but to hold services. They said we've got a mandate. It's from the Lord. So be praying for them. Fortunately, we have exemptions here. So we haven't had to make those kind of choices. But elsewhere in our nation, there are churches that are being threatened with litigation and fines, excessive fines, just for having church. So just be praying for our nation during this time. And, I'd encourage you to, check out the conventions and things like that. If you got time to find those and watch those videos, you'll be amazed. So I don't talk politics much, but I was fascinated by the dichotomy. The Democrats, a bunch of them gave the Pledge of Allegiance trying to show their patriotism, but they dropped under God from it. And just about everything the Republican convention did mentioned God. So there's a huge, stark difference between the two right now. So I'd encourage you to start looking those things up. And if you can find those videos without somebody commenting on it and just watch it and see it for what it is, that's so much better. It is just so much better if nobody's telling you what to think, okay? So, yeah. Yeah, so that's the news, That's not the way it is anymore. So just do your homework, study those things out, because it's incredible. It's incredible. The evening time liberal politicians didn't say the same thing that they said during the daytime because they knew more people might be tuning in at night. So it was just, it's nuts what they're promoting and what they're exalting. It's crazy. So, and immoral. So anyway, be praying for our nation because the Lord's going to have to get a hold of it. And then along those lines, we have a revival scheduled in October. I'm already talking with Tim Thompson and his family and making sure we got everything worked out and praying for it every day. So make sure that you've got it on your schedule and pray about it as well. And I'll be getting flyers that you can hand out and invite friends and family to that. So put it on your schedule, make sure your schedule's clear, and make that a matter of prayer. Yes, Randy? You would have to ask my wife. I think that basically she is pulling out the number of games that we can man. So for all the people we have, she's pulled out a game for it. So I would grab her on the way out tonight and ask. Yeah, there is quite a hurricane brewing up in the Gulf. So it's looking okay for my relatives, not so good for those in Louisiana. So praying about those folks as well. And then don't forget, if you're in Awana, you're going to have a meeting with Paul on Sunday morning. He's already got the notes and everything out here. So he's ready to go. And be praying. Yeah, be praying for Awana. Be praying for Awana. We're looking forward to a good year with these kids. All right, we appreciate you being here tonight. You're dismissed to your prayer groups.